The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning to everyone in Europe and good afternoon to everyone in China. My name is Jonas Rasch and I am Communications Officer here at the EU SME Centre. And I'd like to welcome you to part 4 of our European SME Week webinar series on the key issues for SMEs entering the Chinese market. With me here today is Pablo Recio, who will be giving a presentation on how to find an agent or distributor in China, something that is of interest to many SMEs entering the Chinese market because it is very difficult for small European companies to build a distribution network on their own in such a huge country. So finding a trustworthy and competent distributor is essential for many SMEs, but something that is very difficult to do if you're not in China yourself. This is exactly the reason why we chose this topic for a webinar. During the next 40 minutes or so, you will learn the basics about the different ways to get your products to the Chinese market, how you can build a long-term relationship with your Chinese partner, and how you can make sure that you're getting the best service available. Before Pablo gets started though, I'd like to explain to you how you can ask questions during the webinar, which Pablo will try to answer at the end of his presentation. Since all microphones are muted except for ours, you won't be able to communicate with us directly. To post questions, please use the little box in the GoToWebinar panel where it says enter a question for staff. Any questions that we are not able to answer during the webinar will be answered via email in the next few days. Finally, a few words about today's speaker. Pablo has been living in China since 2005. He started out as trade officer at the Spanish embassy here in Beijing before becoming area manager for a private company in Shanghai. After that, he spent 4 years at Extenda, the trade promotion agency of Andalusia, before becoming director at the Beijing offices of the Gold Millennium Group, a consulting company with more than 75 employees in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Hong Kong. Throughout the last 8 years, Pablo has advised a large number of European companies on market entry to China, especially in the food and beverage industry. Trade barriers, as well as import and distribution processes, are topics he has been dealing with on a daily basis, and we are happy to have him here today to share some of his knowledge with us. All right, the presentation is about to start, but just before, we would like to do a little poll. We want to find out who our audience is today. As every sector has its own characteristics when it comes to market entry and distribution, we would like to know which sector you are active in. Is it either food and beverages, machinery and tools, healthcare, fashion, or other, including service providers like chambers of commerce or industry associations? Okay, I'll wait a little longer for you to make your choice. Okay, let's see which industries we're dealing with today. So it's 48% in the food and beverages industry. That's actually what I expected, and I think Pablo probably as well. So Pablo will spend a few more minutes on the food and beverages industry in his presentation. With this little update on our audience, I'll leave the floor and the microphone to you.
Thank you so much, Jonas, and hi to everybody in China and in Europe. The presentation is going to take roughly 30 minutes. There will be time for questions afterwards. So remember that you can place your questions during all the time of the presentation and we will receive them and we will find a gap to answer them, okay? What we're going to see today is a generic presentation. It is on the essentials that work for any sector, but at the end we have specifics for food stuff industry, which is half of the audience today, fashion and industrial goods. Okay, so most of your demands of most of you will be covered. So this is what we're going to check today. Okay, how do I find a distributor? I've called it a commercial solution because there is other alternatives. How do we know it's the right partner? How do I communicate and build a relationship? If he asks for exclusivity, should I give it or not? And how do I protect my brand? And I'm sure that this company is worth it to deal with. What is the common practice, the day-to-day things that does not show up on the laws or on the manuals? And if I draft a contract, what are the main parts that I could not forget? Okay. Finally, how to manage my relation with this distributor or any other solution that we have, and examples on some sectors. All right. So this is what we're going to see today. So let's get to it. Now, the first part of the presentation is more dense. There is more concepts. There is a lot of information, okay? So how do I find a solution to enter China from abroad? How do I find a commercial solution? Okay, let's say that you have 6 options. The way I've separated, you have 6 options. You can create your own distribution, okay? The idea is that you have your own people to do the work of distributing. Then what is essential there is that you will be doing domestic sales to the customers, okay? Is this common? Well, it will depend on the sector, but I have to tell you that for foodstuffs, it's not very common, all right? But you can create your own network. Option B will be you use a distributor. The main characteristic of this system is that you will be doing an international sale. And then domestically, your distributor will be selling to the clients, but you're doing an international sale. This is the most common system that you will find, not just for foodstuffs. Another option, quite common in Europe, is to use an agent, okay? Now, this idea means that you will be selling internationally directly to the client, which is very complicated here in China, while you commercialize, or you externalize your commercial structure. Now, however this is common in Europe, we will see how it's quite uncommon in China, okay? The agency figure is quite uncommon in China compared to Europe. Why? Well, mostly because of 2 reasons. The first reason is the regulation of the agency figure is not as developed or developed in the same way in China as it is in Europe. So it will be very difficult for you to look at somebody who will dedicate his time to promote your brand based on the idea that he will get commissions later on. The law, the logistics, and the business culture make this very complicated. What is the business culture? China works in a way that the relations are based on the need that we have from each other at the moment. And the agency figure is more looking in the long run, okay? So the agency figure is not very common, while the distributor figure is by far the most common. There is a few other options. You can franchise. Now, the franchise is very common, increasingly common, especially on some sectors like fashion. And the only thing you need is to have 2 shops worldwide and then to be able to develop the system. All right, we will get into details in a moment. And finally, 2 more options is the brand license and the production under license. Pretty much both ideas consist on me lending you to use my brand or my technology to sell the products. Okay, those 2 are very uncommon, and therefore we're not going to see any more of it. Okay, we're going to just focus on the main options. The main option of distribution has the advantage of higher potential return or more control, but the disadvantage of costs, risks, and management. Therefore, you will not be doing it, okay? Most of you will not be doing it. The distributor is probably the option that you will choose. We will see later why. You will do an international sale. You don't have to know that much about China. And most of the cases, it is very cost efficient. You find a distributor, you support him, but you don't incur on big costs, okay? The problem is that you will lose some control. You will have to find a partner first, and you will have to decide whether you choose an exclusive distributorship or a multi-distributorship. Very important, this in China, creates a lot of problems. We'll come back on this issue later, okay? Then we have the agent, but we're not going to get into details. Remember, agency is very difficult. For foodstuffs, it's not possible. You may have some options on the fashion industry, okay? It's very hard to find. It's very hard to manage the relation, and they normally have a short-term approach. The advantage, if you have it, is the cost. And finally, the franchise. And I want to say the main idea about franchising in China. Investors will commit as much as you do. So if you're planning to open something here to provide them support, even a flagship store, that is fine. If you try to manage it from Europe, it is very difficult, okay? And it never works on the foodstuff sector. How do we manage these relationships from China, from Europe? How do we do it? Okay, so your own distribution, obviously you have to be in China with your own network. That's very clear. What happened with the distributor? Certainly you will not normally have your own network. However, you may combine, but you don't have your own network. Will you not be in China at all? That's very common. For foodstuff, that's totally common. You will not have a continuous presence in China. You will come and go and support from Europe. However, it is a plus if you're able to support him from here in China. In fashion, this is very important. In foodstuff, it's a plus. What do I mean? You will have one person on your distributor's office. Or if you're very big or have very big operations, you may open your own office to control and provide support, okay? The agency, certainly you will not have much structure in China. And for the franchise, if you want to make it work, you really have to be here. It is totally recommended. Even have your own network. Now, imagine that I have convinced you already. There are different options, but you want to go for the distributor option, okay? You want to go for that one because it's the most common, it's the one working the best. So let's go for it. How do I negotiate with the distributors? Okay, when you sit with them, be ready to discuss the following things. First, it's going to be in Chinese. Even if they speak English, they're more comfortable speaking in Chinese, so you will have to get an interpreter. They will ask you about your product. Why your product? What are the competitive advantage? How will you help me selling it? And this brand that you're bringing me, it is very popular in your country? Do you export to other countries? And have you been working in China before? With whom? Are you already doing it? How many companies are managing this? This is very common, okay? They also will ask you for long-term relationship and price, but mostly they will ask you for exclusive rights, okay? And all these subjects that you have in front of you, be ready to reply when they ask, because I can guarantee you 100% that they will be asking you these questions when you sit with them. So about the exclusivity, we're going to come back in a minute, but before this, so Pablo, you're telling me that I will sit with my distributor and I will talk about these issues. And you have told me that what I'm looking is a distributor, not an agent, because it's very uncommon in China. But how do I find it? Now, there are many different ways of finding it, okay? You may go to trade fairs. You may do direct market research. You may do a store check. You may go door to door. You may buy a list or get it if it's already published. You may ask other people. You may go to sector associations. You can be here in China, of course, and go to network events and talk to people that you know, or you can have a business agenda prepared. Now, all these are the ways you can get contacts to get a distributor in China. And companies that can offer this are consulting companies, but your Chamber of Commerce normally provide here in China with this service, okay? So the EU SME Center will provide you with a lot of information, and your Chamber of Commerce or consulting companies can provide you with the actual service there where you cannot reach. Now, of all the options that I've given you, by far the ones that get a higher return of investment on the time invested, where you can really get high chances of success, are the business agenda, the daily network, and the direct market research, okay? I've done this for 8 years for dozens of companies in the foodstuff sector, maybe more than 100 altogether. What the problem with the trade fairs? We go to trade fairs. Very happily, we go back to Europe with 80 business cards. And then we call them, email them, and we get nothing back. It's difficult. If you're in China, it's easier. It's slightly easier. That is when it gets medium. But from Europe, it's very difficult. If you've been here on shows before, you've seen it. Now, trade fairs can help you, but doesn't do the whole thing. Now, you have to sit face-to-face with the importer. And this you only get through certain ways, okay? So that is my advice. I've done this many times, and by far, that is where you get higher results, all right?
Now, Pablo just mentioned that the EU SME Center might also be a starting point to find a distributor in China. I just wanted to point out two specific places where you can start looking. One is the first report of our diagnostic kit, which is entitled, Is China on Your Radar? And which includes a list of public service providers at the end of the report. They are ordered by member state. So you can take a look there, and you will find an overview of the main service providers that can help you with finding a distributor in China. And also on our website there is a database of private service providers, so there you can have a look as well and see what's available in the market.
All right, so what have we seen so far? We've seen different ways of distributing in China or finding a commercial solution, the distributor, the agency, the franchise. And we've said that most commonly we will be operating with distributors, not so much with agencies, and in some sectors, franchises mostly. Then we have seen that we will have to be ready to negotiate a number of items when we sit with them, namely if our brand is very famous in Europe. And we have also seen how do we find this distributor, okay? And we have said that ideally you have to sit face-to-face to the person that you will be dealing with. Therefore, the business agenda and daily work works very well. What do I mean by daily network? Is when you live in China and you go to the food stuff, for example, or the fashion, or the biotechnology kits events and networking sessions. And then you go have lunch with the associations. And then you talk with distributors. And then you have an event where you invite also the press. These things that you can only do being here, same as you do when you're in Europe, is what I mean by daily network. All right? So we're seeing those three things. How, with the distributor, be ready to negotiate, and how do we find them? What comes next? A little bit of tips. Before negotiation, remember, mailings have no impact. However, once a partner, mailing works a little bit better, but it still receives a limited reply. Okay? Before negotiating, the English works very limited. Then it works slightly better. With the distributors, before you contact with them, before you have signed an agreement, expect very low reply. You are hundreds, not dozens of thousands of companies all over the world trying to reach the same distributor in Beijing or in Shanghai. So it's very low reply. However, that is why once a partner, you want to keep a very good relation with them, okay? When you're trying to enter the market, you visit periodically. And when you found a partner, you keep doing it, all right? You have to keep doing it to provide support and training. All right, you have to support and train your distributor. China is developed very fast only in the last few years, so they may not know about your product. All right, if you have to insist while you're negotiating, you have to ensure a win-win situation while you have signed an agreement, and always be constant. All right, you be constant. Now we're going to jump to the main question that your distributor will place in front of you. He will say, well, I would like to work with you, but you have to give me exclusive rights. Very common, very, very common. Now, I cannot tell you now without knowing your particular situation whether it's worth it or not, but I've seen many cases, and don't do it unless you're certain. If you hesitate, then don't do it, okay? Why not? China is very fragmented. It's very difficult to reach everywhere, so your distributor probably cannot, even if he tells you can reach anywhere. Everything is based on local contracts, so to reach other parts of China, you get more and more people involved in the middle. And they normally exaggerate their capacity of distribution or use other people to distribute for them, all right? And you will not be able to compare if you give this company exclusive rights, because you only have one option. You will look total control, and in any case, leave a way out. So I give you exclusive rights if you are reach these objectives in this time. And if you don't keep the exclusivity anymore, okay? Now, if you don't provide exclusivity, however, you will be finding one of these two problems. Is the problem of direct or indirect conflict in sub-distribution. How does distribution work in China? Imagine that you have one distributor in Beijing called A, other in Shanghai called B, another called C. It may happen that Beijing distributor wants to sell in Shanghai, but this will be a direct conflict. But this is very uncommon because you normally protect this on the contract very well. And it's commonly known that you cannot do this. So you think you're fine, but the problem is this distributor reaches other areas of China through partners, sub-distributors. This is very common for any product, especially foodstuffs. So to reach to other areas, they use other distributors like A1 and A2, and B does the same, and Guangzhou distributor does the same. And we may still be fine. But they go again even farther, and they reach to another area, and they're all reaching at the same time. You can see there how the sub-distributor of C1, B1, and A2, they all want to enter the same area. And there is where you have the conflict, okay? This is very common in China, and this will be your main concern if you're using more than one distributor. So you have to provide a very good contract, be very clear, and get some control on what is happening in China, okay? This is very, very common, and it creates problem because prices may be different, quality, everything, okay? So be careful with this one. Now, one thing we're going to see not for long is you have to protect your brand when it's in China. And I'm going to explain the main ideas. First, you have to register for China or Hong Kong or Taiwan or Macau specifically. If you're protected in Europe, don't think that you're protected in China. You will have to protect your brand in China. And the system to follow in China is called first to file. So it doesn't matter if you've been working with the brand for 3 generations, the Chinese or whoever will get the brand if they register first, okay? So you have to do that. And when you do it, we suggest that you do it this way. This is how we register our brand, Gold Millennium. The logo, the name in English, and the name in Chinese, all together, okay? So that is the way we recommend it.
Sorry to interrupt you again here, Pablo. I just wanted to point out our sister project here in Beijing, which is the China IPR SME Help Desk. and they provide free advice on IP issues to European SMEs. So look them up on the internet and contact them, and you will find help there.
Okay, we're very happy because we're receiving a number of questions from the audience. Do not worry, we're receiving them and we will address them at the end of the presentation, okay? So don't worry. So we continue with the EU SME Centre webinar. We've seen IP protection before. We had seen the exclusive rights, give them or not. And what else do we have to check? Due diligence, okay? What is the due diligence? Is the reasonable process of research to know if our partners are worth our trust. Are they reliable or not? Okay, during this week, the EU SME Centre did organize other seminars where this issue was totally addressed, so I'm not going to spend much time. You can go to the website, eusmecentre.org.cn, and you can check there a full presentation on this matter. But I am going to talk to you for a minute about things that I see on a daily basis. Now, you get a contact, they contact you from China, to your email. You come to a show once. Even you've been in China and you get this contact. Now, no matter how good your first impression is or how good what their people are offering, you have to check this. How deep you get into detail, up to you, but you have to check these. Common sense questions are the following. How did I meet this partner? Well, contact me on the email, then something there smells strange. For how long have I met it? Has it been an easy negotiation process? Because I can tell you, in China, never is. It never is. So if you find it easy, something is wrong, okay? Something is wrong. And then you have to research a little bit the companies, or you get help to do it, okay? But to research, another common mistake when we do it from Europe. We research the name in English. No, very limited information or none that you will get. You have to get their official name in Chinese that you have to ask them, or you can get from their own stamp, from their own shop, okay? So once you start researching, in our company we divide it into 4 levels. You may do some research on the distance. You can search online or telephone. You can look for whatever shows up in Google or Alibaba or Baidu if you are in China and know a little Chinese. Or you may want to go one step deeper. You may want to ask for some documents that you can check, like the business license or the company shop or a special license, okay? If you're in China or you can get somebody to do it for you, you can also make a visit and then you see them face to face. You check their offices, their warehouses. You talk to the employee, to other companies in the neighborhood or the management office. And if what you require is financial and legal information, then you need to get professional services, all right? So things that we have to do is the due diligence, all right? And this is the way we do it. Now, what is common practice in China? And we're coming most to an end. Your prices will look very high. If you're talking about foodstuffs, it's going to be 2x, 3x the price on the same place in Europe. So if you're selling on a convenience store in Europe, here it will look 3 times. Fashion will be 50%, 70%, at least 30% more expensive. Industrial goods also around 30, 40, depends on the tariff, okay? Also consider that as a foreign company, you will face stricter regulations. But also, you will enjoy a better image. And also consider that China is growing very fast. Change is coming at an incredible speed. That means that new opportunities are created, but the market is not very mature. Many distributors for fashion, especially for fashion, and foodstuff industry did not do fashion or foodstuff distribution a few years ago. So there is the opportunity, but it's immature. And I go back to the moment when I said you have to train and you have to educate your client and provide support. You do have to do it because they just jumping into distributing wine or shoes. And this happens every day, and I've seen it an awful amount of times. And they come from sectors and they have an awful amount of money. They may come from having a factory, construction industry, and now they want to jump into something fancier. Wine, olive oil, shoes, pret-a-porter, it doesn't matter, but you have to support them, okay? And also remember, in China, you're competing with companies all over the world. Now, you're sending this mailing to all the wine distributors. Well, the Australians are doing the same, and the Chileans are doing the same, and the US companies are doing the same. So consider that and understand that mailings in English have little impact. You have to do something else, okay? So we go back to the beginning, what's worth it, what really gets you to get a distributor in China. More things of common practice. Negotiations never end, not when you sign the contract, not at any point, so be patient, okay? There is a big gap between regulations and applications, so you have to know your way around. Again, EU SME Centre has a lot and very good publications on the sectors. Check them, there are other sources, but check what is the reality on the sectors you're working with, okay? Key, build a relationship. It's not just an email or just a call. You have to build the relationship in China. It works this way. That's why you have to come very often. If possible, be here, or somebody shall represent you. And you have to leave them some time to do it the Chinese way. Even if you control a little bit, even if you come very often, even if you provide support, this is China. Things not necessarily work like they work in Europe. All right? What should be in the contract? We're not going to take too much time. All right? The contract is not just to solve conflicts. The contract is mostly to avoid misunderstandings. That is why it's important to draft a good contract. What has to be in the contract? Same as if we're a contract between Portugal and Sweden. Same. Who? Main obligations. How do I fulfill the obligations? And what happens if I don't? Precisely what happened. What is new in China that maybe is not so common in Europe? You have to determine what language and governing law applies. Now you will say Europe, English or French or Spanish, and they will say Chinese and China, and you have to control this. Now, language for these issues is normally English, and the government law may change. But if you're selling FOB conditions, you can try to get your own. In any case, be realistic. For small and medium enterprises, you will not go to a court of law in China in the case that they don't pay or there is a problem. So do not rely on that. Rely on arbitration. I've seen it an awful amount of times, okay? It's going to cost you more to go to the court here than the money that you can hope to win. But arbitration is faster and normally cheaper. So put it on the contract, all right? Last thing that is different in China, in Europe we normally sign the contracts. Here they stamp the contracts, okay? Just a small issue for you to know. All right, so coming to an end on the presentation, how do I manage, how well I'm doing with my distributor? First, set objectives. You need to have objectives. So what happens if we don't reach them? It depends. If you're providing exclusivity, you have to be tough on that. It's a must. If they are not doing their job, they are not exclusive anymore. Or at least you have the choice to stop the exclusivity. If they don't work with exclusivity and they don't want to commit to objectives, it may happen. Your product is new. I don't know how much I'm going to sell. That's okay. We'll set the objectives. It's for reference only. But at least we have a reference, an objective that we have in our mind. So always keep it, okay? So how do I manage the relation again? We set the objective first, and then we provide support. You learn about the market, you build your relationship, you control them, and you help them from the beginning to the end. Not just you sign the contract, you're done. You have to continue, all right? And how do I solve the disputes? Please don't get there. Anticipate them. Because when we are on the dispute, it's just a matter of how much each party loses. But we're not on a winning-winning situation anymore. We're on a losing-losing situation. So anticipate them, make a good contract, build a good relation. That is key. But if we get to the conflict, understand cultural issues, solve it as soon as possible, and solve it as close as possible. Face-to-face is the best, okay? All right, so we're done with the common issues. It's been 32 minutes since I started talking, so it's been a lot of information there. Roughly, we're going to see a few sectors. 3 of them: fashion, foodstuffs, and something somehow called industrial goods, which I know is very different one to another, but the rough idea. So how is the fashion sector? Okay, the fashion sector is growing strongly, very strongly, but you cannot expect returns short term. I'm sorry. Would love to say otherwise, but it's so competitive. So many brands jumping in the market, so many shopping malls opening. So you have to be there for the long run. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It would be great to say otherwise, but we've been doing these projects for a long time. Doesn't mean you have to be a huge company, but you have to be there for the long run, okay? Now, it allows different models of distribution. This sector allows most models of distribution than any. The agent is not common, but it exists. It happens that you may have an agent. Distributor is very common. More than one distributor is very, very, very common. And even the franchise is increasingly common. So this sector is quite open for distribution opportunities. You have a high return of investment and potential margin, and you have to build a brand. That is, you have to invest, okay? And pricing is very important, and you have some option of setting it. Now, many people ask me these questions. Well, I don't have the money, so I will only do online sales, okay? What do you think about that? It sounds great, but it doesn't work. As of today, online sales only work for foreign companies as support of retail sales. Okay, not one time I've seen this, a number of times. We have tried. So that goes for fashion sector. How about food and beverage sector? Half of the audience. Well, that one is opening and growing, has done very well in the last few years, partially because of domestic safety concerns, and you can make profits from the beginning. That's the truth. But the difference between fashion is you will have a small margin. They will keep the big margin. You can make it from the beginning, but a small margin for you, okay? However, when you come to China and you check the store, you will see your price double, maybe triple. How is this possible? You probably think that somebody's getting rich, but very few times this is the case. A lot of costs, not just transportation, tariff, insurance, and consumption tax if applicable, like wine. Wine has 10% consumption tax. What is consumption tax? Like a luxury tax. Distribution here is very complicated. Rotation is slower, so they increase the margin per unit because they sell less unit and it costs a lot of trouble. The amount of hidden cost is very high in China, okay? Here's where we have more issues on sub-distribution, and therefore the multi-distributor strategy is preferred, but very complicated. There is no agents in this sector, no agents, distributors, all of them, no franchises, very strange. But you have newcomers on distribution, so your distributor probably is new on the industry. You have to help him. And last but not least, the industrial goods. There is a market in China, especially for high-tech. Problem is the risk of copy. You have to be very careful. And also China is progressing a lot on the industrial goods that they're producing. Less and less cheap, but more and more quality, okay? Agents are not common. Again, single distributor and multi-distributor are the most common strategies, and they work well. Be careful The idea is that you piggyback on, and I'll explain what that is, on a proportional size distributor. What is it? Don't get a distributor that has already this product. Be a supplier of a complementary product, of an additional product that links very well to their current portfolio, and don't look for very big companies if you're small, or for small companies if you're big. Let's be proportional, okay? You are as important for them as they are for you. This is how it works very well. Now, the pricing is more limited. The margins are more limited. No, it's not 3 times the price. It's more 20, 30, 40. It depends on the tariff, okay? And here is where training is needed. All right, so it's the 35 minutes that we said at the beginning, 36. We're done with most of the information. We have a number of questions, but before that, this webinar is being organized by the EU SME Centre, and I also would like to take a minute to introduce our company. We've been invited. Myself has been invited to provide this webinar, and I'm very happy of my cooperation with the EU SME Centre and also the support of the Chambers of Commerce. I work in a consulting company called Gold Millennium, and we do a lot of things. And we have 4 offices. Maybe you've known us, and if not, well, very nice to meet you today, all right? So thank you so much. We go now to the questions and answers. We have a few here that we will be replying. If you have more, please send them now.
All right, Pablo, thank you very, very much for your very informative presentation. You're right, we do have a lot of questions, and most of you are looking for more detailed information about how to find a distributor in China. Jose, for example, is asking if there exist lists of distributors maybe in the wine and spirits industry, and where he would be able to find them. Can you tell him?
Yeah, there is this list available. Of course they are. Actually, you said wine and spirit. This is one of the most common distributor lists available in China. You can contact if your country Chamber of Commerce or Trade Section. If you're from Spain, Jose, that will be IFEX, and they have lists available for free, or some of them they sell on a really political price, not the real market price. They update it from time to time. If other countries has exactly the same structure. The EU SME Centre, I don't know if they have a list like exactly like this one, but they have a list of suppliers, private companies that do have this list and can update it or make it more up to date for you. So you have both. You have both public and private ones. I suggest you try the public first because they're free or a very limited cost. And if not enough up to date, you hire consulting companies for that, or in the middle you ask the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, somebody else is asking if you have any examples of small European companies that are successfully working with Chinese distributors here in the country.
Yeah, let's say a number, one of each industry, okay? We have one shoe company from Southern Europe, no need to say the name. They've been for 8 years establishing a very good cooperation with a Chinese distributor. They do produce part of their products in Southern Europe, and some of the products are produced here in China. In any case, what they have is the products, the design, and the know-how, okay? And they send one person to China, let's say every other month, to stay here for 2 weeks, and they work together with the distributor. So that's very common. For foodstuffs, I know a lot. Foodstuffs, there is distributors that have 15 to 20 European products. So it's totally common that you can come here, see them face to face. If you reach an agreement with some of them, you start working with them. That's very common. I prefer not to say specific names, but hundreds of companies for the foodstuff industry. If you're talking about industrial goods, I know companies that actually have two and three distributors in China. In the industry, if you're making tools or machinery, some people buy in China and sell in China at the same time. So that also works very well. So I know hundreds of examples, in names not necessarily to be given, but a lot of companies. It's not an issue. It's daily thing.
All right. You mentioned in your presentation that when you're working with a distributor in China, it might be helpful to have an own presence here in China as well to support the distributor and maybe to control them a little bit as well. What kind of a setup does that have to be? Is it like a representative office, or do we need a woofie? Or
okay, yeah, it's a very good question. Examples that I can show you here, they go from a person just working from home, or even going to a distributor office to where they have the table. And what this person does is, normally a distributor has a lot of products. So they may not like so much the control, but they appreciate that you are there looking for business opportunities. So sometimes does not even have a legal structure. It's a person working from home or from the distributor office. But if you want to give it the legal structure and you want to have your own structure, before the most common was the representative office, okay, the rep office. Now, for several issues, mostly taxation, that's not so common anymore, and people are establishing woofies, okay? But not necessarily a woofie is the first step. If you want to come and check for a few months how this is going to be, you don't need a woofie. Your distributor is selling. You don't have the right, you don't have the obligation to have your own company. You're just providing support. And this you can do for a few months without any physical structure or legal structure. If you pass this point, we will probably be looking into a woofie, wholly owned foreign enterprise, a company totally owned by a foreign capital.
okay, I think we have time for one more question, and somebody wants to know a little bit more about contracts with Chinese distributors. Do you have some examples of things that have to be mentioned there?
Yeah, the thing about the contracts is normally because the Chinese want it in Chinese, because believe it or not, they're commonly done in a rush after months of negotiations. The contract is done in a rush 90% of the times. You probably cannot believe it, but this is the case. You negotiate, and then the Chinese person sees the opportunity to sell it and wants the contract very fast. So normally they're done in a rush, believe it or not, and normally they forget all these issues that I've been mentioning before and the one you had on the slide. Normally you said, well, I'm selling this product, but you don't define it properly. Or you say the distributor is not allowed to distribute in this other province. All right, but here is, for example, when you have to be very careful. Direct or indirect. So in all his contracts, he will have to impose his sub-distributors not to distribute to that area. And if this sub-distributors has another sub-distributor, same thing. So this is normally forgotten. What is normally forgotten as well? All right, so it's not legal. It's not allowed to distribute on this area. But what happens if you do? You normally don't set the penalty. So, okay, it's not allowed, but what happens if I do? Nothing happens. Another common mistake is, so if we don't agree, what happens? We go to court. The truth is that never happens. It's slow, it's costly, most of you will give up. So rely on arbitration. It's faster and it's cheaper, and it can be done in English. So it's going to be better for you and probably for everybody. So these things are normally not well explained. Okay, companies normally explain what they mean, but do not get enough into detail. I'm not asking for a 50-page contract. I'm just asking to go one step deeper, okay?
All right, unfortunately we are out of time, so we have to stop here. As all the questions that have not been answered just now, we will answer them via email in the coming days, as I mentioned before. If you have any other questions about finding an agent or distributor in China or any other aspect of doing business in China, please sign up on our website at eusmecentre.org.cn and contact our in-house experts via the Ask the Expert button on our homepage. All of our webinars are recorded, so if you would like to watch this one or any other webinars again in the future, have a look on our website under past webinars. I'd just like to use the last few minutes to introduce the EU SME Centre and our services to those of you who haven't heard of us before. The EU SME Centre is a project funded by the European Union to help European SMEs enter the Chinese market and maintain their activities here. We do this by providing basic advice and information on opportunities and challenges in the Chinese market, as well as the legal and regulatory framework in China. This is a little overview of the services of the center. One of the main ones is the Ask the Expert service that I just mentioned. Companies can contact our in-house experts directly via mail or phone. Companies can also book consultations with us here in our offices in Beijing and discuss any issue in more detail face-to-face. We also publish sector reports, guidelines, and case studies on a regular basis, all of which you can find in the Knowledge Center on our website. Amongst the more than 75 publications so far, you will also find more resources on some of the issues that we have discussed today, like due diligence, contracts, and negotiations with Chinese business partners. We frequently organize trainings and seminars, both in Europe and in China, so take a look at our events calendar on our website to see what's coming up in the next few weeks. All of our services are for free for European SMEs and intermediary organizations such as chambers of commerce, trade promotion agencies, or embassies. To get access to all of them, please register on our website, which is free and easy to do. And finally, you can also keep up to date by following us on social media and by signing up for our monthly newsletter. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you once again, Pablo, for your informative presentation. I'd also like to thank all of you for attending the webinar and the active participation. And don't forget part 5 of our European SME Week webinar series tomorrow, which will cover the CCC mark in China. After this webinar, there will be a quick survey, and we would very much appreciate your feedback. That's all for today. Take care and goodbye.